friends and neighbors. Welcome to the Gifts of Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving and hope you're ready for the holiday season to really get into action. And always remember the reason for the season, the arrival, the advent of Jesus Christ coming to earth as a baby, then growing up to be the man that bore the sins of the world. So let us never, ever forget why we celebrate Christmas, because it is the opening act of the salvation story of Jesus Christ arriving on earth. And the final act on earth, anyway, is Jesus Christ celebrating his resurrection at Easter. Actually, it's more us celebrating Jesus Christ's resurrection, not so much him celebrating. But you got the point. So remember the reason for the season. Now, this week on the Gifts of Glory podcast, we get to meet someone that I've only known via social media, and she is a woman of many hats. She's a mom, and she does all sorts of other great things, and she's got a really great story. Her name is Laura Mae Poirier, though most know her as just Laura Mae. She's the owner and founder at Christian Casting. She's the Chief Communications Officer for 24Flix, which is an online streaming service similar to PureFlix or Netflix. They got a bunch of great family-friendly stuff on 24Flix. I personally am a subscriber. She's also the silver wellness advocate and consultant at doTERRA Essential Oils USA. And right now, as we're broadcasting, as we're putting out this podcast, she is on the set of the new movie Don't Say My Name. It's a 24Flix original feature film that also stars Cameron Arnett. He's the star of Overcomer. We had him on the podcast back in October. Now, Laura Mae keeps really busy using her skills, her talents, her passions and desires to serve in God's kingdom. Be sure to check for all her links to the different projects she's a part of in our show notes. One link to look for, of course, will be this Kickstarter campaign, which actually ends tomorrow as we go live with this podcast on December 4th. Laura Mae and 24Flix are using a Kickstarter campaign to fund the movie Don't Say My Name. So we're hoping that you might be willing to help support the film, because it's a really important film. You can find out more about it again in the links. Find it on Facebook, follow it, and of course, if you're interested in what this movie's about, it's combating sex trafficking, which is an awful, evil industry that is not just overseas. It very much is alive and well, unfortunately, in the United States. The film is taking the sex trafficking industry head on. It's slavery. It's pure evil. And I know in our culture we kind of misuse that word and don't give it the weight that it deserves. But this is evil. Sex trafficking is evil. It's real. The Super Bowl is one of the busiest times of year for sex trafficking, because you have all these rich and powerful people from around the world, and there's so many people, so many tourists, that it's really hard it's really easy to blend in, to hide some of the evils that are going on, because there's just so much going on. It's just evil. And in many ways, the church has been kind of silent, because maybe we're afraid, or maybe we don't know much about it, or we don't know how to combat it. So Don't Say My Name, the 24Flix original production, currently in production in the Orlando area right now, starring Cameron Arnett from Overcomer. Laura Mae is working behind the scenes to help put this film together. So find out about it. The Kickstarter campaign is in the show notes. The link to the Facebook page is also in the show notes. So we just want to encourage you to get involved in the battle against sex trafficking, because it is one of the greatest evils of our time, and it's not talked about nearly enough, especially in the church, where we can pray more and find out more ways to get involved to fight against it. Now, before we get to our conversation with Laura Mae, I was hoping that you might do us a favor. In the season of giving, we're hoping that maybe you might be interested in helping us build towards our nonprofit status. Gifts of Glory Ministries is working towards building to a nonprofit ministry, focusing on our major platforms of Wellverse Comedy, PureFest, which is Chicago's faith-based improv and sketch festival, and of course this podcast is all a part of that. Would you consider becoming a patron of us through Patreon? We have some cool perks for those who come alongside us, and your support is going to make Gifts of Glory Ministries more able to make some major impact for the kingdom, help us provide more entertainment options for families. And we just ask you to please consider going to patreon.com/giftsforglory. That's patreon.com/gifts4glory. Now, it's transitioning out of that, we're going to go to our Devotions with Dave segment. Each week we want to talk about a piece of Scripture and maybe give it some practical application. And this is a Scripture that was on my heart this past Sunday when I gave the call to worship at our church. And it's Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. And I'm going to go ahead and read out of the New Living Translation. Galatians 6:2 says, "Share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ." Pretty short and sweet. Repeat that one more time. Share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. Now, sometimes as a verse that may get glossed over. It's in the middle of a lot of important direction coming from Paul at that time. But that verse really spoke to me during this holiday season. As I record this opening, I just got word that on my wife's side of the family, her aunt and uncle just lost her uncle's mom. She'd been battling a lot of different health issues, so there is some joy in knowing that she's free from the broken body and the suffering and the pain that she's been in. But it's still, my wife basically grew up in her aunt and uncle's home, and her uncle's mother, it was just a dear woman to her. So I just wanted, thinking about that with the holiday season, bear each other's burdens. My wife and I don't see this as a boast, like, hey, look at us, what we're going to do. But we're going to be very close to her aunt and uncle through this time as they make the final plans, the final arrangements. And even though it was a long time coming, and you knew it was going to happen, the reality of it happening is still a shock. It's still a test of your mettle. So my wife and I are going to be there, and we're going to try to live out Galatians 6:2 as much as we possibly can, and bear the burdens during this holiday season. They lost a son recently as well, so they're still grieving the loss of their son, and now his mom is going to be laid to rest soon. So there's just a lot of grief, a lot of stress going on. And during the holiday season, even if it doesn't happen during the holidays, whenever there's loss, or wherever there's suffering, wherever there's a job loss, a relationship loss, a divorce, a breakup even, whatever the case may be, even if they're not in church, or especially if they're not in church, surround the people in your life that have these burdens and show them the love and support of Christ. Don't use it as an opportunity necessarily to preach unless you're prompted by God to say, hey, it's time to drop this nugget. Don't go in there looking to be the hero. Just go to be. Bear the burden. Carry the load. Help them. Do minor things like take care of the home if you can. Cook for them. Clean for them. Check their mail. Help them with their paperwork if you have any knowledge or experience in that. But most importantly, just be. Just be there and bear the burdens. Don't let people who are suffering, that you know are suffering, that are in mourning, go through the holiday season feeling like they're alone in their misery. Give them an opportunity to be distracted. Bless them with your presence. That's the kind of Christmas presence that we really need to do more of giving, is the presence of being there with people. And it's so bearing each other's burdens, carrying us each through this rough life, because we may be here for only 80 years, sometimes 90, but those years can get really long when we feel alone. So I just want to encourage you, Galatians 6:2. I'll share it with you one more time. Galatians 6:2 from the NLT. Share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. So I just want to encourage you to please share each other's burdens. Those that you know are going to have a rough holiday season, share in as much and in as overwhelming a way as you can. Be a blessing. Be the answer to someone's prayers this holiday season. It doesn't take a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of skill. It's just mainly time. So I just want to leave you with that encouragement. Share each other's burdens. Make this holiday a special one because you were together, not because you gave gifts, but because you gave the gift of time, something that can never be repaid, and something that can never be given back. Because once you've given the time, it's gone. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's a beautiful gift. And that should be the number one thing for you to give this holiday season, as much as you can. All right, so that's enough of the Devotions with Dave segment. Let's get to our conversation with Laura May, right here on the Gifts of Glory podcast, where we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts for God's glory.
We are now joined by a person that wears many, many hats. She is the founder, owner of Christian Casting. She's also a casting director at Mount Harvest. She is the chief communications officer at 24 Flicks, among other things she does there. She also does doTERRA essential oils. And on top of that, she somehow found a way to make time to have 7 children, number 7 coming this spring. So please welcome Laura May to the program.
Hello.
Laura,
thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We're excited to have you. You've got many hats, many jobs, many things that you do, as well as raising 7 children. Congratulations on the newest one coming, I believe, in May this year.
You know what? God gave her to us, actually. So that was last year. I think we've been trying a long time to have this interview. And so she was actually born on Valentine's Day of this year. So she's about 8 months old.
Well, congratulations. Happy for you.
Thank you.
So I guess the first question is, what do you do in your free time?
Nap. And I have none, so I take no naps.
Well, you do travel around the country, so I'm sure on the flights you're
yes.
naps.
You know, we actually drive most of the time, and so interestingly enough, there's not even downtime while we're driving, but you know what? That probably is my downtime, and that's when I turn on the seldom podcast that I get to listen to is actually when I'm in the car, and I'm such a multitasker. My husband says that it's sort of a disorder because I can't sit and just enjoy a movie or sit and just drive. I feel like, what else should I be doing? I need to maximize my time. And he says, honey, that is a disorder. There's something wrong with you. I said, no, I have one life to live and one life to present to God. And I really take that seriously. So like, what else can I be doing? I like to stack things. And so, if I have free time, one of my favorite things to do is actually to judge for film festivals. I love seeing the new projects that are coming out and being able to have a voice in, some of their post-production, and if they have a chance to edit, things that we can tweak a little bit. I love, love, love doing that. And so really the only time I sit down with a great movie is when I'm judging for a film festival, but I've loved that. Podcasts are great. And, this afternoon I just chased around my toddler and my 6-year-old, and we just giggled and laughed. And it's been a long time. With all the hats that I wear, sometimes I forget to leave the mom hat on long enough. So just throwing that out there for any other mamas, just feel that conviction, okay? Run and laugh and play with your little guys because they grow up so fast. My oldest is 17, and my youngest then are 8 months and 2 years old, and my 2 and my 6-year-old just chased each other and me around the living room. So that I found, if I have a spare few minutes, that's what I think I want to start doing, is just running with my toddler. That probably sounds lame, but, I do a lot of other things, and that was what brought me great joy today.
Awesome. Now, you did travel recently, I think, to Kentucky and had a little bit of a snafu with the van. Can you update us on what's going on with the van and everything like that?
Sure. So we were actually coming home from the Hollywood Divine Film Festival in Pennsylvania. I had a van full of 7 kiddos. Like I told you, I travel with them. And we were on our way home. We were trying to cruise home real fast, because we have all these other things. While we were at the film festival, my daughter booked a commercial for the website Accountable to You, which is an online and cellular service that helps protect your children's activity or, spousal activity, things like that. It's an accountability program for online apps and things. And so she booked that while we were in Pennsylvania. So we were coming home on Sunday morning, knowing our turnaround would be very, very quick, literally taking our dirty clothes out, finding new clothes to put in our suitcases because we wouldn't have time to wash them, and then driving from Southern Maryland to Kentucky, about 600 miles. And so on our way home Sunday morning from the festival, going about 70 miles an hour, we just clocked a deer, like right there. And split second, we know that God allowed that to happen. And we said, Lord, what are you doing? Are you telling us to try that much harder to get to Kentucky, or are you telling us to stay? And we really had to pray about that morning. And as we're trying to get home and get a rental car, it's not easy to be stranded with 7 kids on the side of the highway. The patrol guys were going, well, hey, you need somebody to pick you up. And I said, well, hey, they're 2 hours away. So do you want me and, baby to 17, you want all 8 of us to just chill here on the side of the highway next to the dead deer? Because we can do that. And he's like, no, let me go over backups. They brought us off the highway. Took forever to get us into a rental that would be able to house us all, because they only had one left and took some time to get that. Long story short, we actually were able to take the rental then to Kentucky. So we had isn't that like God? We had a more reliable vehicle to take to Kentucky than our van, which I was going to take 180,000 miles on it. But it's our film festival van. It's our movie set van. It's our everything van. It's our only family vehicle. So when we came home, we were kind of faced with, what do we do? And we still don't know. I'll be honest. The insurance really lowballed us with actual cash value, and we fought and prayed and asked God to fight for us, and they upped it, but it still was only about half of what we need to replace a vehicle. So we're praying about that. It was a miracle van for us in the first place, and so I'm really needed to hand that to God and say, next month I'm supposed to be in Florida on a feature film set for a human trafficking film that's very close to my heart, and I'm going, God, you see the clock, you know the calendar, and you know that I plan on taking my kids with me, as I always do. And my older children help on set. They help as PAs, and my younger kiddos usually just kind of play in the background. And so we don't know. There's a big question mark there. We don't know how God will answer that yet. But it's just, we kind of live a crazy life and have a crazy faith. And I shouldn't be surprised then that God is stretching that, and that maybe he's using us as an example to other people, just to trust in the midst of some pretty big unknowns.
Right. Now, you did touch on the film, and I want to get into it a little bit more later, but give us a little tease, maybe like the elevator pitch of what Don't Say My Name is, the film you referenced that you're shooting in Florida.
Okay, so human trafficking, as many people know, is a tremendously horrific crime that is making billions worldwide. And a lot of movies have come out to raise awareness. But the issue with the movies that are out there is that most of the time they stop at the rescue. The entire story builds up to the child or the young adult or the adult coming back home. But it was big in the news. I don't know if you saw or not, but there was a young Hispanic gal who just took her own life 2 years after being rescued because she simply couldn't live with the horror anymore. She never could escape the prison that her mind was put in while she was being trafficked. And the family is said to have quoted her as saying, the family is quoted as saying she came back broken and we never could fix her. And so their plea now is, please tell people we need resources and we need hope and healing for these people, because it doesn't stop when they come home. The rescue is not the end. The rescue is the beginning, and we owe so much to these survivors. So much that is not being done. And so this story really takes a lot of the rescue is just a very small part, and we take it far beyond the rescue, and we show you some of the very real, some very ugly, very candid things about the recovery, some very painful things that we don't want to admit. We think if we bring the child home, we've done our job, and it just simply requires so much more than that. And that is what Don't Say My Name is about, is raising awareness to provide the hope and healing that these victims need long after they're rescued.
Right. And having worked with a group in Chicago called Salt and Light Coalition, they have an entire multi-year program where they help women who've escaped and who've survived that lifestyle, and to try to get them reacclimated and get some job training skills, as well as spiritual and emotional rebuilding. Mm-hmm. So like you said, and like it's important, is the rescue is wonderful, but we have to find ways to make sure that they're not only rescued physically, they're rescued mentally and spiritually as well. And I think
exactly.
And I think film like this, and I don't know if you are familiar with it, but there's a film on Pure Flix called Cage No More, which is really good, really very gritty Christian film talking about sex trafficking as well. And Kevin Sorbo's in that one, and that one really spoke to me as well. So the more that we can do to raise awareness, like Don't Say My Name, I think is really important, because in many ways it's such a unspoken thing in our country, because we want to pretend that because we're a civilized nation, it doesn't happen here. But in America is one of the biggest places for it. The Super Bowl is like the worldwide leader for that kind of trafficking and everything. So, yeah, any film that told from a Christian, a Bible perspective is important. So, we definitely need all of our listeners need to pray for the film that is successful, and then.
Thank you.
So we talked about don't say my name. We're going to talk a little bit more. You said before we went on the air, you talked about just signing another actor. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But I want to go back and get to know Laura May a little bit more.
What do you want to know?
What we want to do is one of the things that we always do on the Gifts for Glory podcast is we go back and find out where did you come from and how did you find your relationship with the Lord. Kind of give us your testimony of how you met Jesus and how you found that relationship to where it changed your life.
Sure. Okay, so I usually tell people that I was in church for about 9 months before I was even born. My parents were the kind that would go sit on the front pew if the pastor was washing the windows. Very faithful, very, very stable family, very godly heritage in my grandfathers, and then, that passed down to my parents. And so it's coming down from both sides. And I recall my mom and my dad were both Sunday school teachers, and my mom was cutting out flannel graph. So certain generations will know what flannel graph was. And she was preparing a story about the crucifixion. And I just asked her about it. And I said, well, what does this mean? I was about 4 or 5 years old. And so she explained to me the crucifixion and why that had to happen and why God wanted to do that for us. And I recall just going to my room and just crying. And really for the first time, I mean, obviously at 5 years old, we've heard the story many times, but I remember that was the first time that I really, instead of it just being a story, it was like that was Jesus and he did that for me. So I remember through tears telling my little sister, who was way too little at the time to even understand what I was saying, but I wanted her to know. And I said, do you know that Jesus did this for us? And, my mom had said, do you want to pray and ask Jesus into your heart? And I said, yes, I do. And so then growing up in the church, I had a lot of the same doubts that a lot of the other raised in church kids did. And, at 12 and 14 and 16, I was doing that whole, well, just in case I didn't know what I was doing when I was 5, I better just make sure. And I better just make sure again. And so I had very much a typical church upbringing. And then as an adult, I think is where God really cultivated a relationship with him, because I was always involved in a religious family. And I don't say that is a detriment to my family at all. Absolutely. I believe that they have relationships with God as well. But up until that point, into my young adulthood, religion was just duties that we did. And it was things that we did because we love God, but it was just sort of checking things off a list. And I just did them because I thought that that's what would make God happy. And that's why I did them. And after some challenging situations, extended family situations and job situations and marriage situations and all of that, I really learned to cling to Jesus because of who Jesus was, not because of what he expected me to do, but because of who he was. And then I found Jesus in a very new way, a very real way. And that was crazy to me, because I had known Jesus. I had known of Jesus and thought I had given my life to him, at a very young age. And I had, but there was just a transition where I think God said, and I had even told him, I said, God, as a young adult, I said, I want to know all of you that there is to know. I don't want any of you that isn't you, okay? Because in religion, right, the spectrum from Jesus goes from one end to the other. And I said, I want to know you for all you are and for nothing that you're not. But I look at the Old Testament and I see a mighty God. And I look at the New Testament and I see a very loving Jesus. And that's not necessarily what I've always been taught that my God could be for me today. It's like, well, this is what God was in the Old Testament. Well, this is what Jesus was in the New Testament. But now all we're supposed to do is, go to church and don't do this and don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. And then, then you're serving Jesus. And it was in my young adult life when I prayed that prayer, God, I want all of you that I can know. Things started crumbling. The religion around me started crumbling. And I went, oh my gosh, the foundation that I grew up on suddenly wasn't there to hold me anymore, but Jesus was. And suddenly it wasn't an institution, it was Jesus. And so now I love that, because as a mom, I've been able to teach a very authentic relationship to my kids and what that means to live out your Christianity, not a list of don'ts, and not even a list of do's, but a why. Because if we love Jesus, then we will want to do these things. So it's a desire because of a relationship. So that's probably more than you wanted, but that's my story.
Perfect. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I've always been interested because when you grow up in a Christian home, sometimes it's harder to find that authentic relationship with Jesus because it's habit. You're kind of in many ways callous to it, or many ways just numb to the experience. And sometimes it's either a major event to awaken you to it, or you never do. But you found it at a young age, and you found it authentically, because to be able to be moved to tears the way you were, obviously was an authentic moment. It took maybe a little bit longer to hit that maturity that you were talking about a minute ago.
Right. Well, and I felt called as a child to missions. And I recall even sitting in a service, our church supported a lot of missionaries. And I remember sitting in there going, that's what I want to do. And then in college, we had, missionaries come and visit in our Bible class. And I remember sitting there in tears going, this is what I want to do. And then I ended up marrying a military guy who played a really good game and wanted a Christian wife, but was not a Christian himself, but played one. And so I recall after we got married, I just went, Lord, what did I do? And so this is jumping ahead, to Christian Casting and the missions of media. But I really, for a little while, felt as though I had forsaken, that I had ruined perhaps the very special calling that God had put on my life to missions, because I found myself married to a man who was not authentically saved. And praise God, I'll fast forward 4 years. 4 years after we were married, he did come to know Jesus, and we now raise our children in a Christian home with both parents. So a wonderful ending to that story. But in that time, I just want to encourage anybody who's listening and feel like maybe you have ruined the calling that God put on your life. I want to let you know you don't have that much power. If God has put a calling on your life, I don't believe that we possess enough role in our own existence. God says, can you add a cubit to your height? Can you add length to your hair? Can you add a day to your life? Only I can do that. And I believe a calling is the same way. So I'm very glad to then have found later on with Christian Casting, again, I know we're jumping a little bit, but God redeems the lost years. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that, because that's how that original calling to me, that childhood and even young adult calling that was put away for a few years, God birthed again. So,
yeah, I think that's also important, that the only way that you can ruin, if you want to use that word, God's calling on your life, is just to never answer it, is to stay still and just let life pass you by. But God knows the end from the beginning, so he knew that Laura Mae would be in this position, and that eventually he would use you to bring your husband to an authentic relationship with him, and now he could put you into the mission that he had called you for. So you talked about it. Let's talk about how you go from feeling like maybe you ruined your calling to now seeing your husband find Jesus and find an authentic relationship, and now you've got Christian Casting. How did that all transpire?
It was a lot in probably about 10 or 12 years. So I was a military wife. I came and joined my husband on a naval air base. And so we started having kiddos right away, because we just didn't know any different. And we didn't know how easily we would have kids. And so we kind of talked about it, and we said, well, let's just kind of see what happens. And within about 5 months of being married, I found myself pregnant with my oldest, who is Halen. And so she came, and then after, a year and a half, I just we weren't doing anything different. And I just thought, okay, maybe we'll just have one. And I found myself pregnant with our second. And so then he was born about 2 years later. And then we said, well, maybe we ought to start trying to kind of put a little slowdown on this, because we have a little girl and we have a little boy, and that's just the perfect American family, right? And my husband was never wanted a lot of kids or anything. I had an aunt who had 9, aunt who had 10. And so I thought, when I was little, and just funny, these childhood dreams that God puts in our heart. When I was a little girl, I said I wanted 7 kids. And I felt like with an aunt who had 9 and an aunt who had 10, I was being really conservative, only thinking I wanted 7, because I was like, there's no way I could do 9 or 10. I'll just have 7. It's always been my favorite number. And so I I told my husband, I said, well, maybe we'll discuss some things, talk to the doctor and we'll see. And so the doctor actually told me, wait until your son is 6 months old because you're nursing exclusively. So you should be fine. Well, by the time my son was 6 months old, I was already 2 months pregnant with our third. And at that point, my husband had gotten saved. It was a Super Bowl Sunday, speaking of the Super Bowl. And I remember vividly, I'd been crying in the kitchen. It was so hard. I was pregnant. I had a brand new baby and I had a 2-year-old, and I was going to church by myself all the time because my husband did not have any interest in going. And I had stopped asking. I really had just stopped. I'd never stopped praying, but I'd stopped inviting him to go with us. And so the morning of Super Bowl, which was a big deal to him, he said to me, I was in the kitchen crying, just doing breakfast and getting the kiddos ready, kind of wiped the tears, went upstairs and I got ready. And he came to me and he goes, fine, I'll go with you to church. And I said, it's okay. You don't have to. I didn't ask. He goes, no, I'm telling you, I'll go with you. And he said, it's okay. You don't have to. He goes, no, I'm going. Do you not want me to go? And then I was like, what is going on? So I said, no, you can come. I didn't ask you to come. And I certainly was not telling you to. You don't have to. And he goes, no, I told you I'm going to come. Do you have a problem with that? I was like, no, I was so confused. And so he ended up coming. And of course it was a Sunday that our pastor was teaching a hell and brimstone message. It was like, you drinker, you cusser, you smoker, you evildoer, you la, la, la. And it was a message that really captivated my husband's heart because he had been doing what he did his whole life and never found the peace that he had come to admire in me and my family, and the stability and the joy in midst trials and these things that he had watched in me. And he had tried all these other worldly fixes to get that. And in the middle of that service, the pastors, it was a very old-fashioned church. We're sitting in the pews, and the pastor's giving the invitation. Of course, the wife with the unsaved husband has always got one eye open and is looking while I'm praying. And I see his hand go up, and I was like, what? And so his hand goes up, and then they say, well, if you would like to come to the front. And I thought, oh, there's no way. There's no way he's going to the front. He's a very private guy. He's very back row. It's funny, he's still back row Baptist. And we're not even a Baptist church. We're in a Bible church now, but he's just a back row guy. And so all of a sudden, before I know it, he is moving around me. He grabs my hand, and then we walk up to the front of the building and talk with the deacons and the pastor. And so that was sort of the story about how he got saved on Super Bowl Sunday. And so then, it was a very immediate thing for him. His world was just flipped upside down, and he was immediately on fire for God and wanting to know everything he could. He said, I have so much to catch up on, and I have so much I need to know. I mean, you've done this your whole life, and I'm now 26, and I need to know what you know. And so God called him to go through Bible school. And in that, of course we laughed because when I got pregnant with my third, we just sort of said, we sat back, and after he got saved, he said, we could try to stop having kids, and I'll bet you God would just laugh. And I bet he'd get you pregnant anyway. You'd be the one who's on the birth control and on the everything, and you'd be the one. I said, probably. So after our Esau, who is number 3, we said, you know what? We give it up, God, it's yours, and whatever you want to bless us with, we'll take, because the Bible calls them an inheritance and a blessing, and we just choose to believe that. And so here we are, like I said, 17 years later after our first, and we have had 9 pregnancies. We've had 2 losses, and we've been able to keep 7 of our precious kiddos. So my little Madeline, who was born on Valentine's Day, was, especially after 2 losses, was a very precious God gift. I felt like God's Valentine to me. And so after I had 4 kids, I'll back up a little bit. When I had 4, I was finding myself very, very stuck in a rut of mom life. And I loved being a mom, but it didn't fulfill me the way that I felt like it completely should. Because my mom always said motherhood made her feel as though she was everything she was meant to be. And with me, that just wasn't the case. And it's nothing against my kids. I have awesome kids. That's why I have so many. I just think they're really cool. And so after I had 4, though, the passion within me to do something more was so great that I sat at my table and I said, in tears, I said, God, you've got to fulfill it or take it away. And I'm really okay if you want to take it away. That's fine. But could you please either fulfill it or just let it go? Just take it and bury it. And never let me see it again, because I felt as though I was dying inside, to feel like there was something I should be doing, to feel like that calling on my life that should have been there, and that greater purpose had been lost, that I maybe had missed out and never would know that feeling. And as a young child who had wanted to conquer the world for Jesus, it was a very painful thing for me, a very painful season, because I didn't love my kids the way that I should, because I felt like they were holding me back, but I didn't understand. There was just so much stuff. If any parents out there would probably also understand, there's a really tough balance between pursuing your own things and then being the parent God has called you to be. And so God did answer that prayer very specifically and almost immediately plugged me into a group that would allow me to explore my acting and my singing, my songwriting, and just envelop all those gifts that I thought, had kind of gone to the wayside with motherhood, and he brought them all back to life again. And then what I found was the most fascinating thing is when they told us that we were to be media missionaries, and that the media world was one of the most powerful tools in existence in our day and age to reach people for Christ. And it was that first time that I said, oh my goodness, I can be a missionary still. I can be that person that I always wanted to be. And perhaps it's through this. And so I was pursuing at first singing and songwriting because that's what I thought I wanted most to do. And I went through a competition that actually found me awarded as an actress. And I said, wait, what? I can still do that as a grown-up? I thought that was just something I got to do as a kid, in college and high school. I got to be in these plays. You mean I can play as a grown-up too? What? My God, this is awesome. No wonder why. I'm so glad you didn't take that away from me and fulfilled it instead. And there are a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of times that God throws me on the bench and says, hey, it's time to chase your kids around the dining room again, because today that's the most important thing you can do. But then the next day he'll say, hey, and now I have something else important for you to do. And now you're going to go work on a human trafficking film. And now you're going to go bring your daughter to a commercial that's going to help people keep themselves and their children accountable and keep themselves clean and honorable before God in their social media use and their internet use, and keep them safe. And so it's just always a back and forth. And, as I was going through this ministry, and then I actually worked for the ministry that I went through, then I found that the ministry closed, and I didn't know who I was anymore, because that missionary calling on my life that I had felt was so important for the reasons I explained, all of a sudden was gone, and I was back to being just a mom again. And I thought, okay, I have 6 kids, so I don't underestimate my calling to them, but there's still something inside of me that needs to be birthed. And I've now found that it took the closing of that other ministry for God to birth in me what he wanted to do specifically through me, not me through another venue, but just through me, with the experiences and the trials and the tribulations, but also the very insane, crazy miracles that God had shown to me in my young adult life and my adult life. And so I said, why in acting, why are there's Actors Access, there's Backstage, there's casting networks, there's all these things for secular projects. Why, as faith films get bigger and as family-friendly projects are becoming more desired, why is there not something out there to network those folks? And so I began looking into it, and there just wasn't anything. And so I felt like God very heavily put on my heart, Laura, it's you, and it's time. And so Christian Casting was always very much the name of it that he laid on my heart. And so we found the domain. I found the person who owned it, and because it was already owned, and instead of God allowing me to see that door is shut, he said, Laura, keep pursuing. And come to find out, the person who owned the website was actually someone I had worked with in the past in this media mission field. And they said, we believe in what God has called you to do, so we would like to just sign the website over to you and watch what God will do. And so it is a community. It is a place of encouragement. It is a place of networking. It is a place of coaching. It is a place of just all of us coming together, those who are involved in the faith film industry, those who have that passion to be storytellers for Jesus. It's a place for them to connect and realize that they're not alone, because feeling alone is one of Satan's most elevated playgrounds, I believe. Our mind, our hearts, our sanity sometimes is undone because we feel alone. And even the great prophets, Elijah and Elisha, they're like, I'm alone. No, you're not. There are so many other that were serving God, but they felt alone. And so we really try at Christian Casting to dispel that feeling of being alone and to abide in truth and say, no, you're not. And we want to introduce you to thousands of other people who are just like you, who are pursuing this industry and have their ups and have their downs. And let's all just pursue this together.
That's beautiful. And it's very similar to the mission that, that God put on my heart for PureFest. You shared the casting information about PureFest, looking for improv and sketch and drama ministry teams so that we get people together for a weekend to worship and to perform so that they get that pack mentality of there's other people. Maybe I don't see them every day, but we can connect.
Yes.
We got Facebook and social media that we can talk to each other. Because the good book tells us about the enemy is a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And a roaring lion looks for the weak and the alone. They don't go after the pack. They go after the weak one that's by themselves so that they can get someone out. So if we stick together, it makes it very hard for the enemy to come after us.
Right. Yep.
Really.
I love that.
So what year did Christian Casting begin? When did you found, and how did the launch go?
So it's sort of been a soft launch for the last 2 years. So I started it last year, and we started just with a crazy story, even about God putting that on my heart, giving me the website, and I felt like I needed a logo, and I even had some business people advise me, hey, you don't need a logo yet, and not until you really have something going on. And I said, no, I do. I can't explain it, but I have to have something that represents what Christian Casting is, not just to me, but what I want it to be for Christ as my gift to him. And so I was working with Mount Harvest, casting their production called A Blood Throne, a historical, it's a biblical film, but we also market it just as historical because then we're able to enter it into secular film festivals as well. So the historical accounts of King Herod, especially around the time of his decree that all the Hebrew children, the male children 2 and under, were to be killed, and what that meant then for Mary and Joseph, what that meant for the Hebrew women to lose their children. And so I was doing some casting for them, and I had very briefly just shared with Xavier Garcia, who is half of the brother team at Mount Harvest. And I said, this is my vision for Christian Casting, and this is what I want to do. And I don't even know why I'm telling you this, but I wanted to share. And he's like, no, that sounds great. Like, I really believe that that's something that is so needed. And that's just awesome. I'm so glad that you shared with me. And then we went back to the project. We were casting. We needed our Herod. We needed our Salome, Herod's sister. Those were 2 very powerful characters in the script, and we needed to find this person. And so we were just talking about demographics, and we were talking about how we would transport them in if they were not locals. And so we ended the discussion. And at that point, we hadn't even talked on the phone yet, I don't think. We were just emailing back and forth and had never met in person. So this was just very much a business transaction. And then his brother, Jonathan, the other half of Mount Harvest, Xavier had shared with Jonathan about, my dream for Christian Casting. Again, Jonathan and I had never had any sort of interactions at all. And he had a dream. And he went to Xavier the next day and he said, hey, Xavier, I think we're supposed to make Laura a logo. And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm telling you, I had a dream last night and I can't shake it. I really feel like God is telling us to make Laura, the one who's casting for us. And Xavier goes, yeah, I know Laura, but you don't even know her. He goes, well, no, but you told me about her, and really just God has put it on my heart, and I just cannot let it go. We're supposed to make her a logo. And then I find out that these guys, before they were in the movie business, were in the logo and branding business and worked at a very elevated level, making graphics that were crazy awesome. I mean, these men are gifted designers. And so a graphic that would have normally cost me thousands of dollars, and one that I never would have even pursued for myself, was literally gifted to me. They said, what is your dream? What do you see in your mind? And so I sent it to them, and then I sent it back and I said, okay, the only thing that's missing is a crown. I need a crown on top, because I need to be able to represent to myself and to everyone else who will ever come through a reminder that we are to serve with excellence, and that we are serving the King of Kings, and that serving Jesus ought never be an out or an excuse for sloppy contributions to the kingdom.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as I did recording it. So much more to share in just a minute. So I don't know how much time you spend on social media or watching the news or browsing news websites, but this world is full of bad news. Sometimes it's downright ugly. We need distractions. We need something that's uplifting. That's what Well-Versed Comedy is all about. Well-Versed Comedy is clean, family-friendly comedy, reaches across generations, across socioeconomic boundaries. We're about bringing people together and sharing the joy and the hope of laughter. So whether you have an outreach event, a birthday party, youth lock-in, conferences, corporate event, date night event, whatever the case may be, let us bring that clean, family-friendly comedy to you. All of our shows are 100% original. They're one of a kind because our show is your show. The audience drives it through suggestion and participation, so every show is completely unique and guaranteed to bring laughter and memories for everybody involved. So let us come down and craft a show with your audience. Information at wellversedcomedy.com. That's wellversedcomedy.com, or email us improv@wellversedcomedy.com. More of the Gifts of Glory podcast coming right up as we celebrate and promote men and women using their gifts, talents, and passions to honor and glorify God.
What is your dream? What do you see in your mind? And so I sent it to them, and then I sent it back and I said, okay, the only thing that's missing is a crown. I need a crown on top because I need to be able to represent to myself and to everyone else who will ever come through a reminder that we are to serve with excellence and that we are serving the King of Kings, and that serving Jesus ought never be an out or an excuse for sloppy contributions to the kingdom, that ought to be our mandate to excellence. And I said, if you could just find a cool little crown to put right on top of those two C's, I love it. I love everything about it. But just put a little crown there. And then this is what they sent back. And I loved it. And it was just perfect. And I cried. And so that was the very beginning. And I felt like that was when God said, okay, what are you waiting for? Start the social media. And I said, Lord, I don't even have a business yet. And he said, but you can encourage. And so I literally started with just that logo. And I opened up a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and just started putting encouragement geared toward the Christian performer, whether they be a Christian singer, a Christian actor, a Christian model, a Christian dancer, a Christian business person, whoever it might be, following their dreams. Basically, it was an encouragement place for the Christian dreamer. I'll just say that, for those who want a bigger, crazier faith than your average Christian. And so we started the page and just started putting it out there. And as we did that and started networking and going to film festivals, representing, God has just grown that to now almost 3,000 on our Facebook page, almost 1,500 in our community page, which is just a group that we have on Facebook where we interact, do some monologues, just have some fun. And so that's where we are now. And I've now been invited to speak at 2 different film festivals. One in Dallas, they flew me down to speak at Content 19 for the Christian Filmmakers Network. And then I just came back from Hollywood Divine. We talked about in Pennsylvania, where I was also able to give a Christian casting workshop there. So watching God unfold this 2 years in is really amazing. And I'll tell you, we started our first course. And really the reason behind that was because with all of the unexpected expenses, with hitting the deer and then going to Kentucky right on top of that, and then our rental car and all, we fell negative in our account. And I said, God, how can we get out of this? I mean, I don't see an end. And I thought, I've always talked about doing courses for Christian casting, and I wonder if God would allow this lack to propel a forward motion for these classes. And I thought, well, no time like the present, right? I mean, because I can't even go buy groceries right now, and I don't know what's going to happen with my vehicle. But if God is using this wilderness to show me this is time, Laura, to launch these classes, the feedback was phenomenal. And immediately I had about 25 people sign up. And so we're in class right now. We had multiple after that, kind of put on a wait list because I wanted to give my time and fairness to the group that was in there. And so we now have people on a wait list for our next session. And so God met our immediate need in a beautiful way, but out of a place of out of a valley that seemed like it made no sense. But God's like, no, just like you needed a logo and you couldn't pay for it, I provided. Just like you need a van and you need groceries and you couldn't provide, I'm saying, hey, now I'm going to bring you in. Now it's time for the education. So he said, now it's time for the logo. And then before Hollywood Divine last year, he had said, now it's time for the website, Laura. So I got a website up, and it was very simple. I'm not a web designer. I begged God to send me one, and he said, no, you do it yourself. I went, ah! So I did the best I could. I presented that, threw it online. And then again, now I felt like God is very much guiding this journey. And at each point he's saying, and now I want you to present at this festival. And now I want you to launch courses. And now I want you to this. But it's neat because he always puts me in a very vulnerable position before he's going to move me to that next level. Because I I believe that he needs me to know that it was absolutely him and his divine timing for this ministry, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I would absolutely love that God's hand be divinely leading every step of the way for Christian Casting.
That's incredible. And it's such a cool story to hear somebody say, I was in this uncomfortable place, but I trusted God and he came through because his hand has been through it all. And that's the hardest place to be in, especially when you have the dream, you're like, wait, did I miss the dream? Did I miss the vision? So it's hard to know, is this an obstacle or is this a closed door? And you just feel God says, no, you got to turn left, or he finally opens that door.
Well, and with the Kentucky thing, we prayed, and I even said to the team, I said, hey, look, we're going to need a little bit of help, because if I have to keep this rental car longer, I don't anymore have a vehicle to get down. And I said, Lord, I knew it was a small budget project, but I said, God, I need them to be able to cover the extra expenses for this rental car. I literally just don't have it. And I wrote to them and I said, hey, my daughter and I are still committed to coming, but you saw on Facebook what happened. Our vehicle was totaled this morning. And if God still wants us there, I don't know how we will pay for the extra days on our rental car. And they said, look, if you can make it, we will cover. And I said, okay, God, that you've left the door open. So we came home, we threw our dirty clothes out, put our clean clothes in, and we headed in. But each step of the way, absolutely, we had to bathe in prayer, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes a closed door and an open door look very similar. And you're going, wait, God, is that? Hang on, what are you trying to tell me here? And it really takes that time to sit and wait and be still and listen for the answer. And so I'm really glad that we did that. And it was a great experience for my daughter and myself, and very much a God thing. So I was thankful for the very, very specific answer to prayer. Sometimes I'm a little bit of a Gideon, and I ask God to just please forgive my lack of faith and my fleeces. And he's very gracious to me, as he was to Gideon, and answering those things very clearly.
So with Christian Casting, are you an agency where you're representing Christian actors and performers, or is it more of just a collaboration? How does Christian Casting work?
Sure. So in the future, I would love to actually be an agent, and I've talked with other Christian agents, and it's something that I believe is in the future. But for right now, it's more of a community, a collaboration, a place of encouragement and coaching. And so we don't necessarily represent any talent. However, some of the actors that I have come to know, I'm able to cast them in other productions. So for instance, the man that we finally found for Herod, it was a crazy story, such a God story. I'm scouring. We couldn't find a Herod anywhere. Just none of our submissions we felt in our heart were actually the one that it had to be. And so I went scouring New England actor pages, and I find a picture of this guy, and he's bald, and I went, ooh, he could be a really good Herod. And so I cold messaged him out of nowhere, and I go, hey, I'm not sure what your stance is, but I'm working on this project, and this is a historical piece. It's also a biblical piece, but it's a historical piece, and we're looking for a King Herod. I'm just wondering, do you have a reel that you could send me? Maybe you could, let me see a piece of your acting. And so he went, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, let me send you something. And I'm a Christian, so hey, I love that it's biblical. And I said, really? And so we connected completely out of the blue, just because he had his headshot in a place where it needed to be found. And to be honest, that's actually the gentleman that I just now contacted yesterday, because I couldn't shake it. He's not local to the area where we're filming at all, but he has such incredible and powerful skills and experience in a particular role that I said, God, I just know he'd be perfect. So if you could enable him to come down and do that. So I'm certainly not his manager or his agent in any way, but in a cool way, God is allowing me kind of under all of that paperwork that it requires, the legal hoops that you have to jump through to be an agent. I still get to feel the excitement of helping guide very specifically certain people through this industry. And his story is just one of a dozen people that I've been able to work with and then continue to recommend them for different projects. So they feel like my kids, sort of, they feel like my people. But really at Christian Casting, I have the hashtag CC Family, and I really just feel like that's what we all are. Is I just want people to feel as though they are part of a family, part of this very special family, and that when no one on the outside gets them, because we'll be real, when you're a dreamer and you're a Christian and you're passionate and you have some crazy notions, nobody in your circle gets you. except for those other dreamers that you only occasionally get to bump into. And so the CC family is something that I guess that's more how I view it than anything else. Yes, it's a community, but more than a community, I really feel like we're family.
Awesome. Another project that you picked up this year is the Chief Communications Officer and some other tasks, according to your Facebook page, at 24 Flicks. So what is 24 Flicks, and how does it fit in with Christian Casting and the other things that you're doing?
Well, thank you for asking. So 24 Flicks is a brand new streaming platform, and what we have is a vision to combine not just faith-based projects, but really great family-friendly projects that maybe have nothing to do with faith, and providing those all in one platform as a streaming platform that's available on your Apple TV or your Roku device or your PlayStation, however it is that you watch your streaming networks. We want to provide family-friendly, no cursing, no nudity, no sex scenes, none of that. And so our goal is to promote that not just to the churches, but far beyond the churches, because we know that there are plenty of families who don't make it a point to be in church on Sunday morning, but they do make it a point all week long to make sure that their kids respect one another, to make sure that their children are not, speaking in profane language, to make sure that their kids are not seeing the things that so much modern day television has to offer. And so our dream is to be able to have that beyond the scope of the Christian family and have secular families all over the country. And we actually have people all over the world in different countries who have started signing up for 24 Flicks. And it's just a streaming platform where you can, if you want to find a faith-based movie or a short film to watch, they're all over there. But if you're also interested in just watching a documentary, or you want to watch, for instance, we were at the Dove Awards just a few days ago. So if you wanted to watch the red carpet interviews at the Dove Awards, that's on 24 Flicks. And so we have all kinds of things. If you're an aspiring actor or filmmaker or cinematographer, we actually, at the International Christian Film Festival, which is where I was back last May, that is the largest Christian film festival here in the United States. And we offered something called ICFFU, International Christian Film Festival University. And for 2 days straight, we took the best of the best at the top of the industry, and we had them pour into those upcoming filmmakers, screenwriters, cinematographers, and actors. And we said, this is what you need to know. And we're taking all of our collective years of experience and just handing it to you. And so we took those videos and we put those on 24 Flicks. And it was a ticket that had cost $200 to get in at the festival. And now it's online for anyone to go to 24flicks.com and just check out a free trial if you want to, a 14-day free trial, and then pour through our ICFFU videos, our Dove Awards, our family-friendly films, our short films, our documentaries. And so it's just a really cool opportunity for us to be able to reach the lost, and just pray that God will use their desire for clean content to happen to maybe stumble upon some God content and maybe find Jesus in a place that they didn't expect it. So that's what 24 Flicks is. And actually the man who founded 24 Flicks, Marty Jean-Louis, is also the founder of the International Christian Film Festival. So that's how those two are combined. And also for Christian Casting, as a casting director, then 24 Flicks said, well, hey, since we are producing Don't Say My Name, why don't you do some casting for us on here? So it's kind of funny. It's 3 separate entities, but they all really work together beautifully. The hats stack very well.
Very nice. And it's awesome because it is kind of a covert way to get access to the Word of God through, if they're just looking for the family-friendly stuff. And like you said, there's some really quality Christian messaging that's coming out now. So, maybe they're watching this good stuff and they see something that catches their eye on this faith-based trailer or whatever, then they flip over on that. And even if they never do, the fact that they're protecting their home from negative is also going to protect their family and keep them ready to receive the gospel whenever they're ready, and they don't have those negative images that they're going to have.
And, because we're involved with the film festival, another thing we see too are faith-based projects that are really well done and are never able, they get stuck at distribution and they're never able to get out there onto DVD. And a lot of people that aren't familiar with the film industry don't realize that it costs an exorbitant amount to get your film into theaters or even to get someone to distribute it on DVD. there is a long process to that. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. If you're going to try to get your content on Amazon Prime, or if you want to get it on Netflix, the steps are enormous and entirely complicated. And so we, having a heart for the filmmakers through the film festival, ICFF, we also saw that need. And so in addition to all those other things that, I told you my mind is always spinning with like, how could I do 15 things at once? So I love to find myself in projects that are also looking for 15 ways to serve at the same time. So with 24 Flicks, we love to go to filmmakers and say, hey, we understand that perhaps a theatrical release is what you have in mind, and that's awesome, and we want to pray about that with you. But if you don't secure theatrical release, and if you do find yourself stumbling through, maybe submissions through other distribution venues, we would love for you to put your project on 24 Flicks just so that it can be seen. You've worked so hard. You've already spent the money. The project has been edited, and now your heart is, I just want people to see what we've created. That's the other part of the world that we're trying to get to, not just those families that want the clean content, but those filmmakers who have spent so much of their existence and sacrifice in this project, bringing it to life, and then they don't know where they can get it distributed. That's something also that 24 Flicks is thrilled to be able to offer upcoming filmmakers.
That also, in the long term, builds their resume. They can say,
yeah,
so their film was seen, and who knows what exposure that can lead for future projects.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So 24 Flicks, it's a subscription similar to Netflix, or how does that work?
It is. So you can get a free trial, and you can either pay $39.99 for the year. Yes, I said that, for the year. Or you can do a $3.99 a month subscription. We actually have a brand new package that we're offering too. So let's say a church says, well, we would love to purchase this for the families in our church. And we have actually got it down to about $2.50 a month. Okay, you can't even get gas station coffee for $2.50. Well, you can. When Wawa has it 99 cents if you're an East Coast person. But for $2.50 a month, if your church wants to sponsor at least 10 families in their congregation, or we can do it, 50 families or 100 families. But much like some of the other subscription services, I know that we have a streaming video platform that our church bought a subscription for. So this would be a similar concept where, or a business, let's say a Christian business says, well, I would love to gift this to my employees for Christmas. Then they choose a flat rate, and then that way all of their employees have access to 24 Flicks and to all of the projects that are on there. And it is done either by the month or by the year.
Wow. So 24flicks.com, and you can't beat that rate. It's less than $40 for the year. So, I'm definitely going to check it out because
awesome.
Because we don't have a TV service. We have Roku, and because there's so few things out there. Plus, my wife and I are almost never home. It never justifies it. But 24 Flicks sounds really great, and I'd be happy to support it.
And you can totally get an app on your smartphone also. And you can log in from home and on your smartphone. Say your wife was home and you're away. You guys can absolutely both log in and watch. Awesome. And we have classics too. So, my husband, my husband is a critic. And so with me being this passionate dreamer and my head in the clouds, and then my husband having his 2 feet planted about 3 feet below the surface of the ground, we're a really interesting combination. And so he will sort of pull me down when I need to be pulled down. And I also lift him up to earth level sometimes and go, no, you've got to check this out. And so it took him months to even look at it. And I said, honey, would you please, doggone, would you please just log into 24 Flicks? I put it on the Roku for Pete's sake. So would you please just look at it? And he's flipping through. He goes, wait a second. You guys got Bonanza on there. He says, I love Bonanza. I said, I know you do. And he goes, no, but you have Bonanza on here? And you got more than one episode. I said, yes, sir, we do. And so that was funny. That's all it took for him. And he goes, oh, all right, I'll watch 24 Flicks. I'll watch some Bonanza. We've got old cartoons on there. And so there's just really a great collection of all kinds of stuff that you would never expect. We got a couple of Gumby episodes on there. And then we also have brand new releases from up-and-coming filmmakers. So it's this very eclectic combination of classics and then unknowns and familiar faces, unfamiliar faces. And it's such a neat work of art because it's something that doesn't exist anywhere else. And that you can hand your kiddo the remote and everything is safe. That The highest rating that any project on there will contain is PG-13. Anything beyond that, we simply don't allow through the filtering process. People may submit their projects to us, and we either tell them, hey, if you get, and we've had several say, hey, we want to be on 24 Flicks. And we're like, well, if you can go ahead and take this and this out, we would love to have you. And we've actually had filmmakers who went back and edited portions of their project just to be listed on 24 Flicks because they said, hey, if family friendly is important to you and your people, we'll make it happen.
Very nice. So we're about ready to wrap up. And as I told you in our email correspondence, that one of the things we do at the end is 7 quick questions called the interrogation, where I just fire a top of your head response and just kind of get to know you better in anything that we didn't discuss already. So,
all right.
Ready? We'll go. All right. First question is, what's your favorite sport to watch if you have one?
I don't have one. I'm sorry. I don't watch sports.
Number 2, what's your favorite project that you've been a part of?
Oh, that's hard. You know, probably the very first one, because that is the one I've had innumerable fabulous opportunities and fabulous experiences. But the very one that pulled me and all my kids in first, and the one project that I knew, not only could I live this life, but I could do it as a mom. Right. So I told you earlier, like I was like, oh, I have these kids and now I can't do what God wanted me to do. And I was in a movie called The Unmiracle, just as an extra in a church scene at the end. Kevin Sorbo headlines in that. And a friend of ours, whose name was Brett, he played a young cop in that movie, and he's actually the one who got us on. And I remember him saying, hey, you can show up and actually your kids can come too. And I said, for real? Like, I'm going to be in a movie with my kids? And so that one holds a very special place in my heart, because it was with that film, The Unmiracle by Andrew Papke, that God said, Laura, this is for you. And you didn't have your kids. It wasn't an accident that you had your kids on purpose. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't an accident that you had your kids first. You had them first on purpose, because I wanted them to experience this life with you. So, and now my daughter, who's 17, is absolutely dedicated to pursuing her life passion to the faith film industry. So I'm so glad that God maybe had kids first. So The Unmiracle with Kevin Sorbo and Stephen Baldwin. So that was cool.
Very nice. Question number 3. What is a story from the Bible that you would love to be the part of producing?
Wow. David. I really, my pastor did a series, and it was about 6 months on David, and so many things that I did not know, having spent my entire life in church. He really dug into the history and really pulled out a lot of nitty gritty. And I thought, you know, we have great movies on Noah. Well, we have a not so great movie on Noah. I'm going to be real. Hollywood kind of butchered that one. But we have Moses and the Ten Commandments, and we have great, The Chosen is now exploring the life of Jesus. And if you have not checked out The Chosen, oh my gosh, while you're looking up apps in the App Store, you have to get an app called The Chosen. It's free. You can watch the first 4 episodes. And it is Jesus in a way that you've never seen him portrayed before. And it is the most beautiful representation of the Gospels I've ever seen in my life. Cinematography is phenomenal, and I cannot say enough about it. You'll see exactly why when you go download the app, The Chosen, and go watch those episodes. But, yes, so I would love to do David. I would love to do like parts 1 and 2 of the life of David.
Very nice. Question number 4, your biggest fear in life?
Not hearing well done. That's it.
Question 5, if there's anything in your life that you could change, what would you have changed?
Nothing. Because God wastes nothing. And if I were to go back in my own human limitations, go back and say, well, I would have changed X, Y, or Z, then it absolutely would have changed the rest of the course of everything else. And I look at where I am now, and I feel as though I am exactly where I need to be with God and doing what I am supposed to be doing. And any of the hard things and any of the wonderful things, I can honestly say I would not go back and have changed any of them, because they made me who I was today and brought me to the place that I am today.
All right. Question number 6. Have you ever been on set of a project and seen somebody that made you become a fan? Meaning
that made me become... Like Starstruck?
Starstruck. Good.
Yes. So on the Unmiracle, because it was our first faith-based film, we weren't supposed to, they wanted us to be professional and things. And I, of course, wanted to be professional. So I was not going to run up and ask them for a picture, but I held up my phone like this and I hit the camera to turn it around. I was like, look, because Kevin Sorbo and Stephen Baldwin were standing like right here behind me having a conversation. I was like, so it's funny because then over the years I ran into Kevin Sorbo a couple of times, and then even this last May at the film festival we kind of laughed about it because here we are, 7 years later, and I'm still running into him, on a more personal level now, but that was probably my first star moment, I think. That and Shannon Fields from Facing the Giants. When I met Coach Taylor's wife in person for the first time, I felt like all my Christian dreams had come true. And she is now a precious, dear friend, like a legitimate friend of mine. My kids call her Aunt Shannon, and she just loves them as much as we love her. And so probably Shannon Fields and Kevin Sorbo were my moments.
Very nice. And final question of the interrogation portion. Who is one actor that you would love to work with?
That is an awesome question. I've actually been blessed to work with a lot of the actors. They're friends of mine now. So, Shannon is a huge one. And actor Ben Davies is up and coming, in the faith film world. You can catch him in a dozen of the recent faith films. He is a phenomenal actor. And Cameron Arnett, who starred as Thomas in the Thomas Hill in Overcomer, he's a friend of mine, and so I don't know that there's necessarily an actor that I would love to work with. I do have a secret project that I would love to do through Christian Casting Productions, which is not yet a thing, but I pray that one day it will be. And I already know what my first film is that I want to do. But if I could work with a director, it would be Dallas Jenkins of The Chosen. That. Bar none. That would be, if I could choose one person in this industry to just study under and to work with, it would be Dallas Jenkins.
Perfect. So you made it through the interrogation, and I want to ask all of our guests, if somebody listening wants to get into either acting or casting or the different things that you're involved with, what would be your advice and your wise counsel to them?
Sure. So come check us out on social media, and then scroll through the past videos, scroll through the posts that we've had, go to the website, explore that a little bit. And then if you have, questions, especially about the industry, feel free to email me, or, to be honest, I catch up on the messages through Christian Casting's Facebook page a little more frequently than I do catch up on my emails. Dave, you know this because you're like, hey, that email that I sent you, and you caught up with me on Messenger. I just happen to see Messenger so much more quickly for some reason. But certainly you can email me, Laura@ChristianCasting.com. If you have a question about 24 Flicks, my email is equally easy over there. It's Laura, Laura, @24Flicks, Flix. Laura@24Flicks.com. Like Netflix, it's 24 Flicks. So super easy to find me. And then also just ask questions. My passion is to help train people and help bring along those. I have so much to learn from those in front of me, but my dream is to take those behind me and show them the way as God has shown me. So I'm very easy to find, or Laura May on Facebook, and I love new friends all the time. So you can find me on Facebook too. Just send me a message and let me know that you listen into the show and that's why you wanted to connect, and we can be friends on there.
Perfect. Laura May, I thank you so much for joining us and talking about your many, many projects and 24 Flicks, Christian Casting, all the blessings in the world. And we thank you again for being on the program.
Sure. And if I could mention one very last thing, if you guys are watching this and you feel a heart to help support the vision for human trafficking and that hope and healing, please know that there is absolutely something that you can do. If you go to don'tsaymyname.com, you can see the concept trailer for our film, and you can actually see many of the resources that we've already put out there. If you have a ministry that is already, so Dave, if you would like to send me information on the coalition that you work with trafficking, we'd love to list them on our website of resources, so that if a victim stumbles upon our website, they can go to that resources page and immediately find places all over the country where they can find the hope and healing that they need. And if people want to donate a small gift, or maybe on a large scale become an investor, we're absolutely still looking for those things. But even though God has not provided everything to this point, I'm telling you, that's just my journey. God's like, don't wait until you have all the answers. You go in obedience and just trust that I will provide. And that's what we are doing for the film right now. But I would love for you guys to also go visit don'tsaymyname.com and get in that. If you ask me what's the most important project I've ever done, I would have to say that this is the most vital project I will have ever been a part of.
Outstanding. Don'tsaymyname.com. All those links, as well as links to 20, everything will be in the show notes.
Awesome.
So much for coming on, and prayers for success with Don't Say My Name and everything else that you're.
Thank you. Thank you so much.